At our wedding, the moment the food was brought out, my husband didn't take a single bite. When I asked him worriedly, "What's wrong? Aren't you going to eat?" he gripped my hand tightly. "Don't eat it," he said. When I asked why, his face went pale as he said, "Didn't you notice? This is..." Then, clutching my hand, he bolted from the venue. Behind us, I heard my sister Emily's voice. "Where are you going?" Her tone wasn't worried, it was filled with anxiety and anger. It had all started 6 months ago. Or maybe even earlier. On the surface, Emily and I had the relationship of close sisters. But something always felt off. Ever since we were little, my parents constantly told me, "You need to be patient." Emily was forgiven for everything, while I was always held responsible. Even after dropping out of college, Emily never held down a steady job and lived at home. My parents always indulged her, saying Emily was sensitive. A year ago, Emily came to me with something on her mind. "I met someone wonderful," she said happily. His name was James, and apparently he ran a construction company. "That's great," I responded. "But I don't know how he feels about me," Emily said anxiously. A few weeks later, Emily invited me to dinner to introduce me to James. When I first met him at an upscale restaurant, James was a man with sincere eyes. He told us his parents had already passed away and he ran the company alone. The conversation flowed, and before I knew it, James and I were naturally drawn to each other. At that moment, I saw Emily's expression twist for just an instant. But I didn't understand what it meant. After that, James contacted me directly. "I want to see you again, without Emily," he said. Despite feeling guilty, we went on several dates. We fell in love within 3 months. Emily showed me a smile on the surface. But her eyes weren't smiling. 6 months later, James proposed to me. When I told my family, my parents were overjoyed. But only Emily showed a momentarily frozen expression. She quickly smiled and said congratulations, but there was something cold in her voice. The wedding was set for 3 months later. Emily said, "I'll help too," and participated actively. She was involved in everything, choosing the venue, arranging the food. During a meeting at the venue, I emphasized to the person handling the food, "I have a severe nut allergy. Please absolutely do not use any nuts." At that moment, I noticed Emily listening with strangely keen interest. 2 weeks before the ceremony, my grandmother passed away. When the will was read, the entire estate of $1,800,000 was left to me. "It all goes to Melissa," Emily muttered with a dark expression. My parents tried to placate her. "Emily, that's what Grandma decided." Then came the morning of the wedding. I was preparing in my hotel room with my best friend Claire. As I fixed my hair in front of the mirror, I savored my happiness. "Melissa, you look so happy," Claire smiled. "Yes, James is the best," I answered. "But hasn't Emily been acting strange lately?" Claire said with a slightly worried expression. "It's just your imagination." "Emily's my sister," I laughed. Looking back now, Claire's intuition was right. At that moment, there was a knock at the door. It was Emily. "Today's going to be the best day," she said. There was something strangely bright in her smile. "Thank you, Emily," I replied, but somewhere in my heart I felt a small sense of unease. Emily's eyes were abnormally bright, as if she were harboring some big secret. The venue was beautiful. 80 guests had gathered, and the hall was wrapped in a festive atmosphere. The ceremony proceeded without a hitch. James seemed a bit nervous, but he looked at me with affection. When we exchanged our vows, his hand was warm, and I felt the reality that I would spend my life with this man. The reception began. The guests were excited and gave us their blessings. Emily went around the tables, greeting people with a smile. She looked like the perfect sister. But I had noticed that she kept glancing toward the kitchen. Each time, I saw her expression tighten for an instant. In the kitchen, a young man named Marco, one of the cooks, was nervously preparing the food. I learned later that he was Emily's ex-boyfriend. "Are we really doing this?" he apparently muttered to himself. When another staff member asked if he was okay, he answered, "Yeah, I'm fine." But his voice was shaking. Here, time goes back a little. It was the night before the ceremony. After the rehearsal ended, James stayed behind alone for a final check of the venue. As he walked down the hallway to go to the bathroom, he heard voices from the kitchen. James stopped. Peering into the kitchen, he saw Emily talking with a young cook. "Tomorrow, make sure to put this only in my sister's food," Emily said, handing over a small bottle. "Emily, are you serious? Nut oil?" "She's allergic, isn't she?" the cook said in a trembling voice. "Yes, that's why it's perfect." "It'll look like an accident," Emily replied coldly. James caught his breath. It was an unbelievable sight. "If my sister dies, the inheritance is mine." "And so are you," Emily continued. "I'm in it for the money. $30,000. You'll pay me properly, right?" the cook said. "Of course. Tomorrow night, when it's all over," Emily answered. James left the scene and trembled in his car. "The police, but there's no evidence," he muttered. "Should I tell Melissa?" But the day before the wedding, he agonized. Then he made up his mind. "Tomorrow, I'll definitely protect Melissa. I won't let her eat the food." Then came the day of the ceremony. The food was brought out. The waiter placed the lavish dishes on the table. But James was staring at the food intently. He noticed that only my plate had sauce that was subtly different in color. "This has nut oil mixed in," he was certain. The moment I reached for my fork, James grabbed my hand. "What's wrong?" I asked in surprise. "Don't eat it," he said in a low voice. "What?" I was confused. "I can't explain now." "Trust me," James looked at me with serious eyes. At that moment, Emily approached our table. "What's wrong?" "Hurry up and eat," she said in an anxious voice. "She's not eating," James said. "Why?" "It's such lovely food," Emily said, and in that instant, anger flashed across her face. James stood up and pulled me by the hand. "James, what's wrong?" "Everyone's watching," I said in a low voice. "Melissa, trust me." "Let's get out of here right now," James said. The guests began to murmur. Everyone was confused about what was happening. "Wait, where are you going?" Emily shouted loudly. After such a wonderful reception, her voice was nearly a scream. At that moment, Marco came out of the kitchen. "What's going on?" he said anxiously. Emily and Marco's eyes met. I saw Emily shake her head. The venue was in an uproar. "What's happening?" "The bride and groom," the guests said one after another. I was confused. James's grip on my hand was strong, but his expression was completely serious. "What's happening?" I screamed in my mind. "Melissa, This food has poison in it, James said. What? What are you talking about? I couldn't believe it. Last night, I saw it. Emily giving nut oil to the cook, James said. The air in the venue froze. Nuts? But Melissa, you. Claire gasped. Allergic. I almost died, I said in a trembling voice. It felt like all the blood in my body was freezing. My sister, my own sister, had tried to kill me. That's a lie. I would never do such a thing, Emily shouted. Believe me, I'm your sister, she said with tears welling up. But her eyes were darting around. At that moment, I understood everything. The unease from childhood, the change in her after meeting James, the suspicious behavior during the wedding preparations, it all connected. James took out his smartphone and played a video. Every eye in the venue focused on that small screen. I held my breath and stared. The screen showed last night's kitchen. Emily talking with the young cook was clearly visible. Tomorrow, make sure to put this only in my sister's food, Emily's voice echoed through the venue. You could see her handing over a small bottle. Nut oil. She's allergic, isn't she? The cook's voice. Yes, that's why it's perfect, Emily's answering voice. That voice was cold and calculated, not the voice of the sister I knew. The venue fell completely silent. Everyone was holding their breath. I could see the guests' expressions distorting with horror and shock. In a space so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat, I just stood there. Emily, this is. I heard my mother's trembling voice. Our daughter, her own sister. My father was speechless. My parents' faces were ashen. With expressions of disbelief, they stared at Emily. I couldn't look at my parents. I just stared at Emily. No, this is. Emily shouted. But her voice lacked conviction. Because James was supposed to be mine. Emily shouted. At that moment, the venue erupted. You took everything. The inheritance, James. Emily's voice was filled with hatred. I was at a loss for words. The words coming from my sister's mouth were like the words of a stranger. Emily, I didn't take anything from you, I finally squeezed out. James chose me. He was never yours. That's a lie. Emily shouted. I met him first. I introduced you. And then you. Her face was a mess of tears. But I could tell those tears came from anger, not sadness. She truly believed she was the victim. At that moment, I heard sirens outside the venue. It was the police. James had already called them. After the rehearsal, he had taken video evidence and consulted with the police. But because the evidence was insufficient, the police had planned to make the arrest at the scene on the wedding day. Emily Turner, you're under arrest for attempted murder, a female detective said. She identified herself as Detective Martinez and read the warrant in a calm voice. Emily tried to resist but was restrained by the officers. Me too, arrest me too. Suddenly the cook Marco stepped forward. He was shaking. Emily hired me for $30,000, but I didn't think it would really come to this, he said. Then he pulled a small IC recorder from his pocket. I recorded all my conversations with Emily. It'll serve as evidence, he said. Detective Martinez took the recorder. When she played it on the spot, Emily's voice could be clearly heard. Kill my sister, with the allergy, make it look like an accident. I'll get the inheritance, and James will be mine, the voice said. Everyone in the venue heard those words. Emily shouted at me. Didn't you say you loved me? She cried out. Emily, I'm your sister. I never said that, I answered calmly. My heart was violently shaken, but strangely my voice was composed. Liar. It's all your fault. Emily continued to shout. When the officers tried to take her away, she struggled. Help me, she kept shouting. But I couldn't say anything. I just stood there and watched my sister being taken away. Marco was also led away by the police. He didn't resist. I'm sorry, I'm truly sorry, he said to me over and over. All I could do was nod. The venue was in chaos. The guests were confused, frightened, and looked at me with sympathy. Claire rushed to my side. Melissa, are you okay? She hugged me. It was then that I first realized I was shaking violently. James put his arm around my shoulder. I'm glad I could protect you, he whispered. I looked up at him. Thank you. If it weren't for you, I started to say, then the words caught in my throat. James gently stroked my head. Detective Martinez approached us. Please come in later to give us a detailed statement, she said. You've been through enough for today. Please rest, she added. I nodded weakly. My parents came to me. Melissa, I'm sorry, my mother said crying. If we had properly watched Emily. My father said in a trembling voice. I looked at them both. But I couldn't say anything. I couldn't think of anything right now. The guests left the venue one by one. Everyone was confused and shocked. What should have been a celebration feast had become the scene of a nightmarish incident. The beautifully decorated venue now looked empty. On the table, that food still remained. The food that was supposed to kill me. If I had taken even one bite, I might not be here now. I might have suffered from anaphylactic shock, been taken by ambulance, and possibly lost my life. And it would have been processed as an accident. Emily would have received the inheritance without batting an eye, and would have approached James. Just thinking about it made me nauseous. I sank into a chair. James brought me water. Drink slowly, he said gently. Claire also sat beside me and held my hand. Only us and a few staff members remained in the venue now. As if the commotion from before was a lie, silence spread. I sat there in my wedding dress, just dazed. Was this reality or a dream? I couldn't tell. My sister had tried to kill me. I couldn't believe it. But the evidence was clear. The video, the recording, everything told the truth. Emily, how did it come to this? I murmured in my mind. No answer came back. 3 days later, I was at the police station. Detective Martinez sat across from me, looking at me with kind eyes. Melissa, please tell me about your sister, she said. I took a deep breath. Emily was always a bit different, but I never imagined she would try to kill me, I said in a trembling voice. Detective Martinez nodded. Actually, in the course of our investigation, we've discovered a significant fact, she said. I stared at her. Was there something else? Emily has a criminal record, Detective Martinez said. A criminal record, I repeated. We found a record of an incident from 5 years ago. She opened a file. Do you remember your ex-fiancé, Brian Harris? She asked. Brian, I said in surprise. Of course I remembered. 5 years ago, we were engaged. But one day suddenly, he fell ill, and that triggered the breakdown of our relationship. He had an anaphylactic shock while eating at a restaurant, Detective Martinez said. I gasped. Yes, Brian also had a nut allergy. At the time, it was thought to be the restaurant's mistake, she continued. But after this incident, we contacted Mr. Harris. According to Brian's testimony, Emily was also there that day, Detective Martinez said. I traced my memory. That's right, Emily had suggested we eat together. She ordered the food. And then Brian collapsed. Emily, even then. I muttered in disbelief. Mr. Harris survived, but your relationship with him fell apart, Detective Martinez said. And Mr. Harris left town. I held my head. 5 years ago, Emily had been trying to destroy my happiness. I had thought the relationship with Brian broke down because of an accident. But it wasn't. My sister had planned it. James was also giving testimony at the police station that same day. I heard later that he explained in detail about Emily's stalking behavior. For several months, Emily had been persistently sending messages to James. You're mine, my sister is in the way, let's run away together. There were hundreds of such messages. This is quite serious, Detective Martinez apparently told James. Emily's mental state was quite unstable. But on the surface, she pretended to be normal. No one noticed. Not me, not my parents. The police thoroughly searched Emily's room. And under her bed, they found a diary. When Detective Martinez showed me a copy of that diary, I couldn't believe my eyes. On a page dated 5 years ago, it said, got rid of Brian, but my sister didn't notice. My sister was crying. Serves her right. But Brian didn't die. Next time I'll do it better. I felt nauseous. Was this really written by my sister? On a page from a year ago, she had written about James. James is the perfect man, rich and kind and handsome, he will be mine. And several months later, why did James choose Melissa? I met him first, I introduced them, she took everything. Melissa always wins, but this time will be different. The entry from 3 months ago was even more shocking. Grandma died, all the inheritance goes to Melissa, $1,800,000, unforgivable. If Melissa dies, the inheritance is mine, James is mine, everything will be mine. On a page from 1 week before the ceremony, there was a specific plan written. Paid Marco $30,000, he's my ex so he can't refuse. On the wedding day I'll put nut oil in my sister's food, she'll die from the allergy, it'll look like an accident, perfect, and then James will comfort me, we'll be together. As I read the copy of the diary, tears wouldn't stop. This was my sister's true self. While playing the role of a kind sister on the surface, in her heart she hated me and was planning to kill me. How blind had I been? This is premeditated murder, Detective Martinez said. And she had committed similar acts in the past. Emily wasn't mentally ill, she was a deliberate criminal. A few weeks later, the trial in court began. I sat in the witness stand and looked around the gallery. James looked at me and nodded encouragingly. Claire was also nearby. But I didn't see my parents. They probably couldn't bear it. Emily's lawyer argued that his client had mental illness and her capacity for responsibility should be questioned. But the prosecution submitted the diary as evidence. This is a premeditated crime, not mental illness, the prosecutor said. James was called as a witness. Emily persistently continued stalking behavior, he testified. The massive number of messages remaining on his phone were presented as evidence. The courtroom murmured. Marco also took the witness stand. Emily calmly explained the plan and paid me money, he said. I was threatened by her. She said if I betrayed her, she'd report me to the police, he said in a trembling voice. Then Brian appeared as a witness. Seeing him for the first time in 5 years, he looked a bit thinner. 5 years ago, the same thing happened to me, he testified. Emily chose the food, I almost died, and my relationship with Melissa fell apart. My eyes met Brian's. He smiled sadly. His eyes seemed to say, "It's over now." I nodded slightly too. "I'm sorry," I murmured in my mind. Emily sat in the defendant's seat, looking down the whole time. Occasionally she looked toward me, but her eyes still held hatred. She hadn't repented at all. She probably still thought it was all my fault. The judge read the verdict. Emily Turner, for 2 counts of attempted murder, stalking, and other crimes, I sentence you to 25 years in prison. The courtroom buzzed. Emily suddenly stood up. "No, help me," she shouted. I stared at her. But I said nothing. "Goodbye, Emily," I murmured in my mind. The officers took Emily away. Her screaming voice could be heard outside the courtroom. Marco was also sentenced. 10 years for conspiracy. However, there was a possibility of a reduced sentence considering his provision of evidence and surrender. He quietly accepted the verdict. When we left the courtroom, James hugged me. "It's over," he said. "Yes, it's over," I answered. But was it really over? The wounds in my heart wouldn't heal easily. Claire approached us. "What will you do now?" she asked. "We have no choice but to move forward," I answered. Holding James's hand, I looked up at the sky. Blue sky spread above. Several months passed after the verdict. Emily was imprisoned in a women's prison. I heard that only her lawyer came to visit her. My parents had never gone to see her. Emily, who underwent psychiatric evaluation in prison, was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder and pathological jealousy. She was receiving treatment, but apparently she still continued to say she resented her sister. After the incident, my parents came to apologize to me. "I'm sorry, if we had properly watched Emily," my mother said, crying. "We spoiled Emily too much," my father also bowed his head. "I don't want to say anything right now," I answered. I temporarily cut off my relationship with my parents. 6 months passed, and I gradually began to contact my parents again. But it would still take time to completely regain trust. My parents regretted how they had raised us. But the past couldn't be changed. We could only move forward. 3 months after the incident, just James, Claire, and my close friends, we held a small ceremony again. "This time it's truly a day of blessing," Claire smiled. "Yes, I'm so glad James was there," I answered. "I'm glad I could protect you," James squeezed my hand. We purchased a new house. In a place away from memories of my parents and Emily. James's company was also growing steadily. I also gradually resumed work. The wounds didn't heal easily, but time was slowly healing them. 6 months after the ceremony, I found out I was pregnant. When I told James, his eyes lit up with surprise and joy. "Let's create our family now," he said. "Yes, a real family," I answered. A few months later, a baby girl was born in the hospital. "Have you decided on a name?" James asked gently. How about Hope? It's our new beginning, he suggested. That's a lovely name, I smiled. Holding little Hope, I felt the warmth of new life. A year later, we were spending time in the living room of our home. James was playing with Hope on the floor. On the wall, photos with Claire and new friends were displayed. But there wasn't a single photo of Emily or my parents. That was our choice. Holding Hope, I thought quietly. On that day, I learned. Family isn't about blood ties. Emily was my sister. But she tried to kill me. My parents said they loved me. But they didn't stop Emily. A real family is someone who protects you with their life when things are difficult. James protected me. Claire supported me. They are my real family. And now, I'm creating a new family. Hope, you will grow up surrounded by love and trust. Because that's what a real family is. Hope looked up at me and smiled. That small smile filled my heart. The wounds of the past won't disappear. But we create the future. Sometimes I think about Emily. The days when I loved her as a sister. But I can't go back. She made her choice. I make mine. James, I called out. He turned around. Thank you for protecting me, I said. I'll always protect you. That's my role, he smiled. Petals were dancing outside the window. A new season was beginning. Our new life also starts here. Not imprisoned by the shadows of the past, looking toward the future. Together with James, Hope, and our real family. At dusk, the three of us sat on the sofa. James had his arm around my shoulder, and Hope was sleeping in my arms. It was a perfect moment. This was the happiness I had been seeking. A family bound not by blood, but by love and trust. My sister is in prison. A 25-year sentence. By the time she gets out, our lives will be in a different place. We might never meet again. That's fine. What is a real family? I now hold the answer to that. Bonds stronger than blood. That is choice, and trust, and love. Emily was my blood-related sister. But James and Claire and Hope are my real family. And that was enough.